So the next question is, spare the rod and spoil the child. Do you believe in this statement?
Yes, I do believe, because now if a child goes and touches a fire, what do?
Stop the child.
You just stop the child. You might even hit the hand to make sure it goes off the fire. So there are certain times when you need to uh, bring some point into the child's understanding, which may not happen if you want to try and explain, because the other school of thought is to explain. But that doesn't mean that we're not talking about abuse. So we are just talking about correction with love. That's very, very important, that you correct with love.
Yeah, as long as the message is properly balanced and maintained. I don't think there's a case for extreme positions. There obviously the rod can be administered without discretion. And it doesn't mean rod. That's not the messaging. But even given human nature of even learning, certain points of emphasis become necessary. They are particularly to do with certain deeper issues or qualities of character. Because the scope for correction is higher in the impressionable child. So why would you neglect to use skillfully all possible options? Finally, the outcome is what we are concerned, as I said earlier. It's a matter of great importance. The child development is not a matter of a very relegated priority. It's pretty important, it's very central. And omission can be missed opportunity. But then when you say rod, it doesn't necessarily have to be all the time literally the rod. In a way, it's about the firmness and the seriousness. So are you able to get that message across?
For example, even when you were growing up, when you were a toddler and you would do something which is not correct, and I would explain to you, and I would give a punishment that would require you to go and sit in a corner facing the wall. And I would say, go sit there and think about what you've done until you think, and then you can come back and tell me that yes, I have understood that what I did was wrong. So I would make you do that, and it was not just once or twice, I don't know whether you remember, but then you have done it plenty of times. But then I think those are the moments that which inculcates that type of feeling in the child, that yes, something is wrong, because that conscience is what we are talking about here. So if something is wrong and it is, so the conscience needs to prick a child. And for that, certain times, of course, this is necessary.
There are obviously abuses, but do we react and refrain from using a means that is so important for the upbringing of a child? Even in adult society, punishments are there in order to bring about a correction or a sense of fear of a consequence. So the fear of a consequence is an important ingredient of improving human experience. So even today we see social restraint is necessary, is what we all are hearing. But to exercise that restraint, again you need the lockdown. It isn't voluntary. And even if it is a lockdown which message is very clear, even there we try to figure out a way to actually have our liberties at the cost of human society. So this is the trace in human society throughout human existence. Self-correction, if it were an ability of a human being all the time, then we don't possibly talk about a topic of this kind. But that's the reality. So instead of conjecturing something else that is appropriate for that reality, we might as well use it, but again, skillfully, not literally the same as a rod. The messages that we need to achieve, those points of correction, of direction for the child. And we rather achieve it as they grow and then try to straighten it. Even in cultivation, when we grow trees sometimes tend to take different directions. A good farmer knows as to how to grow that particular tree and supports it. Doesn't give it the freedom to grow whichever way. That's when it becomes wild. So there are obviously chopping and other things that are done. So I believe it has its space.
And it also, I think, matters what you are correcting, because I don't think anytime through my childhood you forced upon me like you should get 100%. Those were not the things you were correcting me on. You were correcting me on more character traits, or if I was showcasing any quality which was not appropriate. Those were the things you focused on. So I think that also is important, because if you try to correct for everything and you discipline for everything, then the child is not going to listen to you for anything eventually.
So it's definitely not rod. So it's actually a sign of weakness if a parent is using that to obtain effectiveness of improvement. So that's a weakness of a parent, that the parent would use a forceful method as that inappropriately for things where parent can use influence by modeling. So many instances you may not model, but then you want to actually use the stick to force it upon a child. That's not going to be a healthy upbringing. So as you said, corresponding to the need. So we don't straight away, when we go to a hospital, we don't straight away be wheeled into an operation theatre. Operation theatre indeed is there. It's actually a provision in any hospital, but that's not the immediate need. So that's where it is the skill and the understanding is very essential. If you want to have, because finally it is not just about developing a child independent of developing also the parent-child relationship. So if you were to appear as a figure of terror upon a child, you lose the child. And what's all the development about? Because you already alienated the child. So it's an art, it is a skill which needs to be very carefully administered.